Hey guys, Volatile Explosion here. We're going to be talking about the fact that last night the UK had a referendum to leave the European Union or the EU. And the UK left the EU with a vote of 52% to 48%. And holy shit, people are just freaking out in every way. So now that the UK left the EU, the British pound dropped in value. That's probably not going to stay like that forever, but people were freaking out how the British pound did drop in value, and that sucks. But the funniest shit is, the UK Prime Minister, he resigned. Pretty much, the UK Prime Minister said, listen guys, I'm going to vote to stay in the EU. If that doesn't happen, I'm just going to resign as the Prime Minister, because I just don't want to have a part of it, right? So right now, the UK's Prime Minister resigned, and honestly, I think this is just a hilarious clusterfuck of shit that people both did and did not want, because it was such a close vote. Like 17.4 million people voted to leave the EU, and 16.1 million people voted to stay in the EU. Like, holy shit, that is way too close. Now, for my general understanding, now this is very generalized, so, take it with a grain of salt. I heard that most of the younger people wanted to stay in the EU, and most young people were inclined to say stay in the EU. But more of the older people wanted to leave the EU. I don't know if this is 100% true, but that was what I've been hearing around on the interwebs. Heard very many young people say, no, let's just stay in the EU, guys. Why would we want to leave, man? There's no reason to leave. And then old people are like, I've been pushed around by the EU. Fuck the EU. Fuck immigrants. Actually, that was a huge topic. Okay, so let's talk about that then. So now that the UK left the EU, people in the EU cannot live in UK without getting separate, UK visas, right? Because before... This is very convoluted, or very confusing, but before there were 28 countries, I believe, in the EU. Now, anyone in a EU country could move to any other EU country, work there, live there, without having to get a separate country's work or travel visa or whatever, from what I've been told. I don't know if this is 100% true, but I heard that that is how it works. Now, apparently, a lot of people didn't like that in the UK, because they thought that it was bringing a bunch of immigrants from, let's say, Greece and Czechoslovakia. I have no idea if Czechoslovakia is actually in the EU, but I know Greece is. So let's say there's a bunch of immigrants coming from, Greece into the UK. Now, I heard a lot of people did not like that, so they wanted to leave the EU, so immigrants would stop coming into the UK, taking their gerbs, and yeah. But generally, immigration just helps the economy in general. Just statistically, immigrants help the economy. I don't know. People might not know that, but that's just a fact. That immigrants do help the economy. They don't generally take the very high-end jobs, because that's what people in university do. They generally take the low-end jobs that people, you need people to work at shit like Costco and GasMart and whatever. And generally, immigrants have a tendency to take those jobs, and they're happier, because they have a better standard of living there, even though their standard of living isn't, high-end, right? But it's still better than a poorer country. So, people in Britain were super mad about that, I guess. Oh, God. Fucking UK, man. UK. I have to stop referring to them as Britain, and refer to them as the UK, because people might get mad at me. Anyways, I really want to know if there's anyone watching here that is from the UK. I want to know what you think of this whole EU referendum and how the UK left. I want to know, man. I never expected this to happen. I actually thought they'd stay in the EU, but it was a really close vote, so I guess they left. And that's kind of sad. But, oh well. That's okay. So, now that they left the EU also had a bunch of trade agreements in, right? And that applied to all the EU countries. But now that UK left the EU, they are also going to have to make a bunch of new trade agreements, and they're going to Pretty much, they have to make a bunch of new laws and new agreements with countries that the EU had in place for them, and it's just a mess. Most of the laws in Britain are going to stay the same, though. Like, those are just British laws, right? The EU didn't force British laws, they just forced more international laws, I should say. So, the British people, I don't know. It's such a fucking mess, and I don't know how to feel about this, because I've never really even been to, like, the UK. And I know this is just such a hot topic, so I really want anyone in the comments section that lives in the UK to tell me just your opinion about this, why it's good, why it's bad, just whatever you want. I want to hear from people in the EU, because this is actually such a fascinating thing that EU is declaring independence from, or that the UK is declaring independence from the EU. It's fucking amazing. This happened once before where they did a vote. I believe it was like 3 years after they joined the EU. I'm not 100% on this. I read the dates last night, and can't be fucked to look them up again, but I know that they had a referendum once before. And obviously they stayed in the EU because they were still in the EU. And I don't know how close the vote was before, but yeah, we'll see. So now there's going to be less immigrants in the UK, depending on what they decide to take in. They're going to have to make new trade agreements, new country agreements, new diplomatic agreements, possibly. Oh my fucking god, it's such a mess. But yeah, the dollar went down. Well, the UK pound went down. I'll assume it's gonna go back up, but I can't be certain, obviously. I'm not a fucking economist. So yeah, please just, if you know about this situation more than me, obviously, because I've just read a couple things and I find this situation interesting in general, so I want to talk about it. But if you're from the UK, or if you know a lot about this subject, please just comment at me. And that's the end of this video, guys. Remember to like, share, favorite, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.